And welcome to the show. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio. My name is Shane. I'm here with Scott.
Good morning, everybody.
As usual. And we are also here with KE7IRO, KF7BNB, and I am KC7DTV. So,
and for those of you who are like me, who are like, wait, what the crap did he just do?
I'm getting into that.
Here comes the exciting part. This is the Scott, you've been slacking for far too long. You need to just go.
There we go.
Study.
No, you're absolutely right. I was going to bring us in a little bit different way, but I didn't want to hurt your feelings, Scott, because you don't have your ham radio license yet.
You just spilled what everyone is waiting to hear.
Well, yeah, you've mentioned
intro.
it before.
That was a horrible intro.
I'm sorry, Scott.
So you know what? This show is brought to you by survival-medical.com. So there. I'm a Thunder Stealer today.
First aid evolved. Well, see, I usually do that, so now it's your turn. So, yes, survival-medical.com. First aid kits that are designed to last up to 20 years.
Yeah, you're going to see them all over town here in the next week.
That's right.
All the PrepperCon billboards are going up. So you're going to see Survival Medical's logo up there. You're going to see Vital Dome's logo up there. They're a couple of our big sponsors this year. They are going to be giving away a ton of stuff at PrepperCon. And that happens actually on April 21st and 22nd. So save your tax return if you get one. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get one, that's even better. But take some money, set it aside, come to PrepperCon. You're going to find everything you're looking for in the world of preparedness.
You're definitely going to want some money when you show up there to get some cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm here with, I said their call signs. We're here with Scott Saunders and Clint Hall, two communications guys. Not just ham guys, but communications guys, right? So Scott, step to the mic there and tell us a little bit about you and what you do. And
Yeah, Shane, like you said, KE7IRO, Scott Saunders. I'm from up in the Cache Valley area. I live up in Smithfield. But yeah, I own High Altitude Communications, do public safety radio, do a lot of the private two-way radio communications through the private industry, as well as ham radio, and just an enthusiast and love radio.
Pretty cool. So we're talking radio on the radio. I know you're excited about that. And we've got Clint Hall. Clint, tell us a little bit about you and your company.
KF7BNB is my call sign. I'm part owner of Ambient Regional Services. We're located out of Weber County. And like Scott over here, we handle two-way communications.
A lot of commercial?
A lot of commercial.
Okay.
Of course, we're always happy to sit down and talk ham.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're an ICOM and a high-terror dealer, and of course we have accessory lines as well for antennas and any supplies that's needed. So
cool, and we'll talk more about that as we go. What we want to talk about today is communications for SHTF, as I like to push it. But rather, it's just emergency communications is really what it is. And it's not only for emergencies, it's a lot of fun. It's there's different bands, obviously. And when you get up to what's called high frequency, you can talk all the way around the world. And so some people really get into this and are really involved. And there are some of us who are fairly passive. We use it for emergencies. But there are a lot of different options, the way you can use basically these different broadcast bands. Tell us a little bit about because you hear VHF, UHF, which are probably somewhat more familiar to most listeners. Tell everybody what those mean, what they are, and what HF is, and why someone like us, preppers, would want to have those types of frequencies and those types of equipment at our hands for an emergency.
Well, let's start with HF radio, or high frequency. That kind of covers the gamut from 160 meters, which is down in the 1.8 megahertz range, clear up to, you're going to be in the probably 10 meter range, which is 28 megahertz.
So that's all considered high frequency.
That's all considered.
And the purpose for high frequency is really talking long distances, correct?
Exactly.
So when you're actually talking, this 10 meter, 60 meter, that's the actual height of the radio frequency, the length itself. How do you define that?
That would be the wavelength.
The wavelength, the actual top of the wavelength to the bottom of the wavelength. So if you're looking at, say, I'm trying to figure out how to describe this to our listeners, or what this wavelength looks like.
Well, it would be like a sine wave.
Okay.
A sweep up, sweep down.
There we go. Something you might see on when you're in the hospital, but it's not the sharp peaks. It's more of a rounded peaks, and that's the actual photograph, a picture of the wavelength itself.
Absolutely.
And so that's high frequency. And so then there's very high frequency and ultra high frequency.
Yes, very high frequency, or VHF as we call it. That's going to run from above 30 megahertz to 300 megahertz, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your commercial public safety will fall in that spectrum as well.
Okay.
Ham radio, that's, I believe, the 144 to 148 megahertz.
The very high frequency, the VHF.
Exactly. And then you move into your UHF, which is above 300 megahertz. And you're going to move into, drawing a blank here,
I've
about
actually
420 to 450 megahertz.
There you go. Yeah.
In the spectrum there. VHF is still good for some longer hops, and
Okay.
UHF
Just
is
needs some
gonna
more power to it, more amps to it.
exactly.
Okay.
The antenna is what's going to play the.
Now
the
we're going to
biggest
get into
role
how this
there.
actually, under some of this technical stuff is probably maybe boring you. I mean, I like it, but we're going to get into how this.
99% of us are like, what?
What are you talking? So I wanted to do this brief introduction to what VHF, UHF, and HF is for our listeners, so that we can then say, okay, how do we apply this and use this to our emergency preps, or even every day.
So understanding the 80 meter, 10 meter, all of that, to me doesn't really resonate very well because I don't see sound waves, and so to me it doesn't resonate, right? So distance wise, how long do those travel?
Well, the meters are calculated. So if you were to take the wave, you were to do a full cycle,
Okay.
From
For
the top to the
example,
bottom of the wave.
80 meters, which is your 3.5 megahertz spectrum. That full cycle of that wave is going to be stretched out 80 meters
Okay.
in length.
Okay.
Okay.
So from
Full
the bottom of the
cycle.
wave to the top of the wave is 80 meters in length. Okay. So what's the advantage of that? Is it helps it get over distant over mountains? Because I know that, like for example, you've got FRS, which is just a family radio, and so they're very low power, and you can only talk a short distance. Or like CB, Citizen Band, you don't have much. You can't talk very far. That's because the bandwidth is not very tall, right? And so you're not able to get up over obstacles like mountains or houses or so forth.
Yeah, Shane, I'll jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
Above and beyond the actual frequency and band that you're in, there's several other factors, which is your mode, AM versus FM,
Okay.
amplitude modulation versus frequency modulation, as well as the FCC regulated power output. CB radio, which used to be called the 11 meter band, used to be ham radio allocated, then it was reallocated back to citizen band, but they only allow 4 watts. 4 watts in an AM mode, which amplitude modulation is based off of power output. So in the CB band, if you were legally able to broadcast on a CB channel upwards of 100 plus watts, you would be talking worldwide.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
For a CB station, it's just you're limited down to the 4 watts legally. No CB is produced that can transmit more than 4 watts. Not saying that
Right. It can't be done.
there's a lot of bandit amplifiers out there that people and truckers get, and they put it on and they just blow everybody out of the water, and that's why you can hear them and no one can hear you. And then the amount of traffic, the more traffic that's on that band, the dirtier it becomes and the harder it is to get out. But so when you're talking frequency, you also need to at least associate what mode you're using. In ham radio, you have a lot of upper band, upper side band, lower side band. You got CW, you got a lot of digital modes you could run in. But if you're talking just strictly voice mode, transmitting, you got either AM or FM. And then if you're going to stick in that certain mode, you can compare apples to apples. If you're going to be talking 60 meters, 80 meters and all that, and you're going to say that's FM and we're talking voice, then you can kind of compare what distances. The lower the frequency, the farther you can get, but the more power you need.
So yeah, let's talk
Gotcha.
CB a little bit, because anybody can walk into the Radio Shack or pretty much go anywhere and buy a CB for their vehicle.
Yes.
Whether it's stick an antenna on the roof, a magnet mount, and be able to talk. I think that is a pretty good option for basic emergency communication within families within a small area.
By far, even today, it's one of the most common forms of radio. Every trucker's got one. Every farmer's got one. A lot of these gravel pits, that's all they use. And most of it's CB. You don't need a license. A CB you can pick up for $30 to $60 at any truck stop. super easy to install, but very poor performance as far as distance. But what I've always understood too in prepper, when you're talking about communication, it's not always just the means to talk to someone, but means to listen, hear what's being said out there. A lot of traffic's going to be on CB radio. You're not going to. So a good listening device, like a good scanner, whatever, is going to pick all that up. But I definitely wouldn't use it for my mode to talk to my family or my group that I need to talk to. And it's definitely a good tool to have to listen.
So let's start with the basics. Start with CB, and we can start with FRS as well. But one thing I wanted to make a comment of is, I put a pretty nice CB in my rig, and I got a lot of flack for it. Well, this is not the '80s anymore. But do people still actually use CB? Because when I'm driving down the freeway, I have it turned on, I'm scanning. You don't hear much of anything. So I guess it's mainly truckers, probably.
Well, interestingly enough, like I live up in Bountiful, and my stake uses CB radio as their primary communication on the hill. That way, they don't have to have anyone get a ham license to be able to do emergency broadcasting when we have an issue.
So within the ward boundary, it's easy. Quick communications.
Our stake boundaries are so tiny.
Even stake.
I mean, we're fine. We're all basically on a hill. There's a few homes that you won't be able to get the signal because they dip down. But each of the buildings has a radio in it, and so the person just goes to the building. And in the stake center, we have like a whole stack of different radios, ham and a bunch of other stuff. And there's one guy in the stake that's his calling. He takes care of all that, and so he'll tune in and listen to all the different channels and stations, and then repeat on the CB what the ward coordinators need to know. And so that's the system they use. And so you're not the only one using CB, Shane.
Very cool. It makes me feel a little bit better.
And it's actually on my list is to get a CB radio so I can talk to you from the road.
Yeah, I think having very cool. I think and I think one thing I've always used ham CB for is, say we're traveling in a family caravan to some destination for family summer vacation or something. And so we've always used CB just to talk to each other, or FRS. So FRS is a family radio service. So these are this little small, we call them walkie-talkies that you can find at Walmart or anywhere, right? And they're a similar frequency. I mean, what frequency those are? What band are those?
The FRS runs the UHF band, more specifically 462 and 467.
Okay.
Again, it's a great band. It's a great frequency range. UHF isn't amazing, but they're like the FRS specifically is limited to half a watt.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they are running in the FM mode. There's multiple UHF repeaters that upwards of 100 to 150 watts can reach out to about 200 miles. So,
well, that's what we use for PrepperCon. So we've got a bunch of little the Baofeng. We're on the FRS channels. We're half a watt.
Or it's not GRMS because that's a little bit different.
No, we're on FRS.
You're on FRS, okay.
Yeah. We did that specifically because we don't want to deal with any mistakes. We don't want to get in trouble for anything. My neighbor came over and I told him what I'd bought, and he's like, "Let me set those up." I'm like, "Perfect. I was going to ask you anyways."
So no license needed.
No license needed.
No license needed. They're pretty much that pair of radios you can pick up at any Walmart or sporting goods store.
Yeah.
About $40 to $80.
And they have like 40 channels and then a bunch of subsets.
40 channels, and then the sub channels are what are called TPLs or tone private lines. They're just a toned. It's that same. So channel 1 is channel 1. It's the same frequency. If you go to any sub, your frequency doesn't change. What you're doing is you're putting on a tone on the receive and transmit side. So say you're on channel 1, sub 15. If I'm just on 1 with no sub, I'll still hear you.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you just fine. I don't know if they've changed those FRSs to be toned no matter what. Like, no sub would still be basically sub 0 or sub 1.
I think you have to be.
At least the older ones, if you were just listening to one, you would hear anybody on 1 sub or whatever channel. You couldn't talk back to them, but you could hear them for sure.
Okay, very cool. We are talking emergency communications here, ham radio and other bands in particular. We're going to get a little more into those details. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio with our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com, the only first aid kit tougher than nature. Please come back after the break. We'll be less boring, I promise. All right, thank you for joining us here on Prepper Talk Radio. You're listening to Scott and Shane. And our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. Go and get some first aid stuff because you will need it.
It's pretty exciting. They are they're doing some shooting right now of new videos
Yeah,
for
I
their
saw
new
that
product
yesterday.
lines, and they're dragging it through the mud, through the Snake River up in Idaho. They're throwing it off cliffs just to show that it is rugged. It is going to outlast anything else that you're looking at. Maybe the only way to improve on it is to then take it and throw it in one of those Pelican cases that are somewhat indestructible. But it's a fantastic product. Definitely check it out. Make sure you guys get out to PrepperCon. They're going to be there right when you walk in. They're like the second row in, so they're going to have a ton of stuff. We're giving away some of their products. April 21st and 22nd from 11 until 10 on Friday. So if you're working, you can still get in and get a ton out of the show. And then on Saturday, it's 9 to 8. So we're going to have a lot of celebrity guests. We've got some new classes that we're going to be doing. We've got some new sponsors, new products that are going to be displayed. There's a new gun coming out that's going to be showcased there at PrepperCon. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I know what it is.
Make you wait. But you can get discount tickets if you go to preppercon.com/tickets. Use KTALK, KTALK. It'll get you an extra $2 off your tickets if you order online.
Perfect. And, yeah, that's one of the gifts for thanking you for listening to us here on K-Talk. And, of course, K-Talk will be there, have their own booth there, and we'll be broadcasting live the entire time from PrepperCon. So do we have any ham radio classes?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we do. Okay.
We do. We've got one on Friday, one on Saturday, and I think we have a stage presentation, but I'm not sure on the stage presentation.
Okay, cool. Scott, have you signed up yet?
I
to
have
come out
not,
to Prepper.
no.
Okay, we've talked about this. This is how I met Scott. Is a couple of maybe it's the first. I think it was the first PrepperCon. And,
Yep.
And now we're on our third, and we've stayed in touch. And Scott has helped sponsor the Forerunner Evader, the communications on the Forerunner Evader there. So, if you need any more knowledge, any gear, get with these guys. Your companies again are High Altitude Communications.
Correct.
And your highaltitudecommunications.com?
Yep.
Correct. Cool. And then, remind me again of yours?
Ambient Regional Services.
Ambient Regional Services. And so you do sell to the public as well as commercial.
Absolutely.
Cool. And you're up in Ogden?
Yeah, we're in the North Ogden area.
And you have a website as well?
It's under construction. We do have a landing page with our information. It's
Okay, cool.
ambientregionalservices.com.
Very cool. So what I have found to make this as easy as possible, get with the people who know what they're talking about. Because kind of as you heard in the first segment, this can be kind of overwhelming to learn, okay, where should I start? Should I start with a CB, FRS? I want to get into ham, but where do I start? So these guys can really help you narrow that down. Okay, start here. Looks like we've got a caller. Let's roll the dice and take a call. Hello there. Who's this, and what's your comment?
It was a question. I know little to nothing about radio or ham radio, and I was curious about something. If you've got a ham radio frequency and you've got a tower, is it like a regular two-way radio where your antenna needs to be the same length as the wavelength you're broadcasting off of?
Well, let's have these guys answer that technical question, but the antennas are specific to the frequency, to the band, to whether VHF, UHF, and so forth.
I thought you were going to let them answer the question.
That's not the technical.
Precursor.
That's not the
Slow
technical
down.
aspect of it.
All right,
So
let's hand it off.
Go ahead. Thanks, Chase, for your question.
The technical answer is yes, it needs to be tuned. Now, it depends on the antenna design. One popular HF antenna is a G5RV, which is essentially a long piece of wire.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to be tuned to the particular band based on its length. Other antenna configurations are tuned a little bit different. The best thing to do is to get on the internet. There's endless resources there, or get with any of the local amateur radio clubs. There's guys there that they live and breathe ham radio.
They're happy to help, yeah.
And they want nothing more than just teach the hobby.
So I've seen antennas online. I follow a couple of ham groups because I'm trying to learn, and I've seen a few that look to me like the NCAA March Madness brackets. What are those used for?
It's huge.
Those things are huge. There's just wires going back and forth every which way. Like, what are those used for?
Those are typically Yagi antennas, and they're an element antenna. They're more for a focused signal. So they're trying to push that signal in a more focused pattern a longer distance.
Okay.
in a particular direction as well, correct?
Yeah, and they're typically mounted on top of a tower with a rotary system where you can turn a dial, kind of like your old satellite dish back in the.
So they kind of look
80s,
like your
early
old
90s.
attic antenna for your receiving your old TV signals, analog
Yeah,
signals.
and they're very directional. They do have what's called reflective on the backside, but I mean, you just sit and you can twist your dial, turn your antenna to whatever degree heading you want it, and that's where you're just focusing most of your energy right towards. Versus all your stick antennas that look just like a pole. Those are called omnidirectional.
They just go out in all
360
directions.
degree.
And that's what most of your handheld radios are going to be, most of your mobile
Yes.
ham radio. When you're talking ham radio, we're typically talking 2 meter and 70 centimeters. So those are the most common. So in the 144 range and the 440 range, that's really all you need. And that's where most people are going to start in their ham radio. Is you get your ham radio license, which, like these guys say, jump online. There's plenty of resources. You can find local testing centers and all your resources to study for that. I know, Scott, you've been working on that.
I have, or I should say I was.
Oh, okay. But then PrepperCon is coming. I know
PrepperCon takes
it's
over my
taking up
life
over your
for about a 3-month period, and we're halfway into that. We've got about 35 days till PrepperCon.
So where are you studying? What are you using?
A couple different resources. I got a ham beginner's guide book that literally is, I feel like it's bigger than my Bible. It's huge. And I'm like, holy crap.
I have to know all
And
this
every
for the test?
3 words there's like a number with a megahertz or whatever behind it, and I'm like, crap.
Some new terminology you
And-
need to learn.
And then I'm flipping back and forth, and so I kind of gave up on that because I was just my brain's not wired the right way for ham, apparently, or anything technical. So I jumped on, there's a couple different websites that have practice tests for free. I found one of those, and I've been taking the practice tests. So far, I haven't scored above a 69. My first test I got a 40. So it's like, wow, I didn't understand that book at all. So, but you go through the questions over and over, and I guess you test from the same question pool every time, right?
Yeah, I believe there's a pool of 300 questions generally, and when you go to take the test, I believe they only select 30 to 35 questions to give you.
And now, can you test online now, or you still have to go to a test
No,
center?
you still have to go to
Okay.
a test center. A volunteer has to perform the test. Usually someone in the local ham club is certified or registered to provide those services, and it's usually believed 2 or 3 testers have to be there. You can't just go take it with one person like at their house. or
Right,
whatever.
okay.
Yeah.
Kind of got to be an official setting.
Do we know what the cost is? I haven't even checked what the cost is for testing and such. It's not much.
$10 to $15,
Yeah.
and it's really just covering the costs of whatever facilities they're using. A lot of times there's classes held where if it's an all-day class where they have the whole class set up, 20 people or so, and everyone tests the same day. I mean, you just get it done in one swoop, but I think it's around that $10 to $15 price.
Cool.
Some clubs may do it for free and cover it out of their club funds, but very inexpensive.
So
Just
what's the benefit of going with getting your FCC license and your call sign over just using a CB or using FRS or GMRS? These small handheld units.
First off, studying, just other than just picking up a radio and hoping someone's there, you come to the end
Right.
or whatever the SHTF
TF,
scenario.
yeah.
If there's no store to go just buy a radio when yours breaks, you kind of need to understand how it functions, what the
Okay.
critical components are. Hopefully you can fix it yourself, keep it running, keep it going, understand
That's a good
what
point.
to modify, what to change. But just knowing the basic principles of frequencies, what's going to work best, what's going to get you out the farthest with what you have is critical. So just that basic knowledge, that's probably your biggest benefit, other than the ability to use frequencies and channels and repeaters that can just
Restricted
get
to-
you out there that are restricted to licensed amateur radio operators.
Now,
And then that pool, that community pool, that the resources, the assistance, the friendships you build, and the daily use of radio, that muscle memory of knowing how to field program a radio, who's going to be on what groups are on what
Yeah.
frequencies and
Yeah,
what
I think that's
bands.
one of the most important things is knowing who to communicate with. Because there's a lot of people that I've watched in those groups on social media that are like following the ham radio group, and they're like, well, I'm not licensed, so I'm just going to, when the crap hits a fan, I know that I won't get in trouble if I get on, so I'll just get on and I'll
Right.
listen to see what's going on and, get help when I need it. And I'm like, How do you know what channels you need to be on?
Yeah, because you
How do you
can buy
know-
a radio without a license, but you just can't operate it.
Right.
Yep.
You can get it legally, right? You're gonna.
Yeah, anybody can get anybody can get a radio. Anybody can get a scanner. In fact, it doesn't need to be a transceiver, which is a receiver and
Right.
transmitter. You can actually just buy a general Radio Shack scanner. And you can be scanning anything from your low band to aviation to all your public safety ham.
And just
you can
having
listen to anything.
Just having that information can be very valuable. Just listening, like they say, you can listen to aviation, you can listen to search and rescue, you can listen to the police. Obviously, you can get police.
NOAA weather radio.
There you go, weather radio.
reports
Yeah, absolutely.
24/7. What those infrastructures, whether they continue to run after an SHTF or how long, is unknown. But as long as they're up and running, they're critical resources for information.
Well, we've all seen I Am Legend, right? So he's broadcasting out his signal every day that I can provide shelter, I can provide. So there's always that potential scenario where you need to be able to listen out there for important news. And so I guess my advice is, for example, my family is in a fairly close geographical area. We're not like reaching out of state or anything like that. So that's my first priority, is be able to communicate with family. And so that even is really not possible with an FRS radio within Utah County to reach both sides of the county, right? So ham really comes into play at that point, so that we can all communicate outside and out. So everyone can understand, cell phones work off of towers, right? Cell phones they don't talk phone to phone. You have to have a complete system working together to talk to anybody on this.
Yeah, not just towers, but full internet infrastructure, microwave. I mean, cell phones are just an amazing resource, but they are very complicated and very easily overloaded, very easily changed, especially earthquake, any of those microwave links. If they're not hardline through the internet linked together, if it's through a microwave, those are very focused radio pieces of equipment, and if they get out of alignment, they cease to talk.
There we go. Okay,
and your phone may show it has a signal, but if it can only talk to a tower, but that tower is no longer connected to anywhere outside of its area, then you pretty much have a dead line.
So these have those kind of Yagi antennas that are pointing directionally.
They have
for their internet connection rather than having a hard line.
Yeah, like a grid type antenna. There are multiple panels, and even though you may only see one physical antenna, there's multiple sections of that antenna.
Okay.
They're actually very smart antennas. They can adjust based on usage. They can actually turn themselves and focus in a high dense area and kind of redirect all their signal to areas that are needed.
So if anything interrupts any one of those stages, you have no communication.
Exactly.
Your phones will not function. You won't have
any
signal.
Phones will be by far the fastest things that drop
down. So the benefit with any one of these devices, whether it's a CB all the way up to an HF high frequency transceiver, is you're talking radio to radio. There's nothing in between.
Yeah, you're taking away all that critical infrastructure that's in between it. And bottom line, as long as you have a battery or power source of some kind, it works, it talks. Depending on your power output and frequency and mode or whatever you're using, limits the range, but it will function.
Yeah, that's the cool. Now, also, the hams in the 2 meter and 440, there's a lot of repeaters out there. Repeaters are towers that are probably side by side with the cell phone towers right on the top of a mountain.
Correct, yeah. So all the local clubs usually have a $10 to $20, $30 a year subscription to that club. Those funds go to support local UHF, VHF repeaters. Some of them are up in the 900 megahertz. Low band or high frequency, you don't ever see repeaters on stuff like, or HF stuff, but all your VHF, UHF, or what's referred to as 2 meter or 70 centimeter have a lot of local repeaters. Great resource.
And the purpose of those is to extend your range.
Yep,
of your mobile or your handheld ham radio, so that you can reach out further.
Yeah, those repeaters sit on vantage points or a high point, and they can their visibility or their reach is usually 10 to 20 times what a handheld or even mobile.
The one that I use most often, my handheld or my mobile gets me basically to the mountain, and the mountain gets me out another 90 to 180 miles, which is plenty for a little handheld, little 5 watt or 4 watt handheld ham radio, 2 meter or 440. You can reach out 100 plus miles with this, and that's absolutely fantastic for communicating with family. I also wanted to get into what are the reasons? What are the reasons why we should get into ham right now? I mean, get into learning communications right now. I mean, it's a lot of fun for me. I'm not, and I want to say there's a bit of a.
Let me kind of
stigma.
back up.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, from a non-technical side, so I'm a non-technical person. So, for all of you that are listening that can kind of relate to me, you're kind of going, wait, get what? I'm gonna hurt. There's watts and werts and hertz and jerks and things, and I don't know. And the essential of it is this: ham is magical. It works. It's the way to communicate, because after the crap hits the fan, what else will be functional? Cell towers, they only work so long. If a repeater goes down, it goes down, but you can always build a new one. You can do that. Does anyone have the technology to be able to just go out and build a new cell tower?
No, that's a good point, because these clubs go out and maintain these things themselves. Yeah. They know how to take care of it. So you've got
this really cool network of people that are smarter than me, smarter than most of us in that area. They're just like, let's maintain this, let's keep this going. They work on it. And so you've got this huge network you can tap into that will teach you, mold you, help you, and then after the crap hits the fan, they're a resource to help, and as well as you are a resource to help in other ways. And I think that's the best part of ham. To me,
absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about what ham means, where that came from, and we'll try not to get too boring of that.
It's food.
Ham, yes. We love bacon, right? Well, thanks for listening to Prepper Talk Radio, brought to you by Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. The only first aid kit's tougher than nature. See you after the break.
Broadcasting live from the top of the Rocky Mountains, K-Talk Media.
All right, we are back with you here on K-Talk Media. Check out the website, ktalkmedia.com. And we'd also, of course, like you to visit our websites as well, preppertalkradio.com eventually, .net
right now.
.com.
We're working on it, and we'll move everything to .com once the site's built.
And connect with us on Facebook at Prepper Talk Radio, as well as, of course, I want to throw out PrepperCon as well. And then Prepared Guy, that's me, and preparedguy.com. I like to blog. And we've got a phone call in here. So let's roll the dice and see what kind of question. You're on K-Talk here, Prepper Talk Radio. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yeah, a question. Before the break, you guys were talking about if things hit the fan, the ability to utilize the ham radios. What are the power requirements for that? Can you run a ham radio off of just a regular gas generator?
Yeah, absolutely. One of you guys want to take this one?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting you brought that up, because I was kind of moving towards that. So every year, the Amateur Radio Relay League, they sponsor an event. It's worldwide. It's called Field Day. Typically, it's towards the end of June. I believe this year it's the 24th and 25th. But what they do, yes, 24th and 25th of June. The big thing behind Field Day is these guys go out and they go mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to make as many contacts in as many areas of the world and the country as possible. And they're given points based on their power, the type of power they use, whether it's solar, whether it's battery, or whether they're plugged in. Yes, you can run it off a generator. If it's most radios are going to be 12 volt.
Mm-hmm.
You can run it off deep cycle battery and a solar panel.
And there's lots of ways you could charge that battery.
There is.
Yeah.
So that is another great thing about ham radio is it's meant to be mobile.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, off good. And one thing I wanted to bring up right at the beginning of this segment is ham. We hear the word ham. What the heck does that mean? Where did that come from? And I guess there's two different thoughts here where it really came from. There are the original founders or the pioneers in the industry, Hertz, Armstrong, and Marconi, and they did several different things, from coming up with a theory of FM to building the first FM transceivers or transmitters, and then actually broadcasting across the Atlantic. And then, Scott, there's another one you had heard.
Well, the one that's most credible is what was put out by Western Union back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when amateurs started popping up, when wireless was created.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 1900s, they started calling them hams or lids. It was a derogatory term for amateurs.
Okay.
And that's where everything I found leads to that.
Mm-hmm.
The synonym that you use wasn't created until about 50 years ago.
Okay.
So that's where I'm like, I'll fight you on that one because I've researched the history because it really, I'm like, it's such a weird name.
Yeah.
It's such a weird word. But that's the earliest use of the word in radio was the early 1900s. Western Union actually put out a telegraph complaining about all these hams that are ruining the airwaves. Well, here's the cool thing, and you guys all know this. The cell phones we use, the internet we use, all of that was actually developed by ham radio operators. They learned how to transmit packets, and then they're like, okay, let's find a better way to do this. And then they're, oh, yeah, you can do it this way, too. And,
That's
okay,
true.
now we'll create a data packet, and we'll send that. And
Just like anything,
that's
it
where it
develops
all created from
the
radio.
Yeah, from the first beginnings of AM or FM frequency or modulation, and building up to the digital age, where I know you were explaining to me, Scott, earlier about how everything is still kind of analog. Not everything, but it's really even switching over to digital in transmitting, these frequencies.
Yeah, until just recently, most transmissions were still analog, and even TV was still analog.
Right.
But in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge push to go digital, and that's just allowing to free up band space. Analog frequency transmissions are a wider base, or anywhere from typically it used to be about 25 kilohertz wide signal, and now digital's cleared down into like 6.5. So each transmission's using less band space or frequency allocation. So when what used to be transmitted across 25 kilohertz, one channel or one voice path, you can now get up to 4 paths. So you moving to digital is cleaner. It's easier. And it's kind of the technical world is just meant for digital.
And fit more information onto
you
those
can fit
bandwidths.
more information on one bandwidth. So, there's just a lot more options as far as encrypting and things like that can be utilized with the digital world. As far as, I mean, not just only voice, but now you can do voice, you can do text, you can encrypt everything. You can do voice and text on the same frequency. And
so you can have a transceiver hooked to your computer and essentially type messages.
Yeah, and that's actually more old school.
Okay.
I mean, that's still, but now it's your keypad, your DTMF pad is right on your radio.
Oh, okay.
You select the contact you want to talk to. Those two radios are programmed for each other, and just TTY or T9 technology. Just the one keypad is like 5 different characters. You just type out a message.
Okay, so kind of like texting, but
just like your old texting on your old flip phone.
So what he's saying is on these transceivers, these mobile units, you have a keypad, kind of like on your cell phone.
Yep.
And so that's what he's saying is you can punch that into there, kind of like
messaging. So you're not radios aren't just for voice anymore. You can you can text a group of people, you can text an individual depending on the network that's made, or radio to radio. A lot of that technology is not only to repeater infrastructures and systems like that, but can also just be used radio to radio. But private messaging, old analog systems, when you're talking about radios and repeaters, you're talking a one-to-many conversation. I key up my radio, a ton
everybody
of people
hears
can
it.
hear
Yeah.
anybody on that same frequency can hear me. Digital systems now are it's one repeater still, but you can select individual radios to talk to, and it's just a one-to-one conversation or a one-to-many conversation, depending on what you choose. So you're still getting all the benefits of a repeater and the ability to broadcast to several people at the same time. But then on the digital side, you can also select and have a more private conversation as well, so not everyone can hear you.
So the practical application for preppers with this type of setup is
talking about where your food's stored.
Exactly. You can have you can go to these guys. They can set you up with different types of radios, anywhere from the GRMS on up, right, and show you how to operate them. So you have a small prepper group, right? A small community, and you want to keep it.
Still in the analog world, you always have to assume someone's listening.
Okay. Even if it's on the digital side,
we can be triangulated too, can't we? Like if we're broadcasting illegally, you guys can find us.
Yeah, if you're a mobile station or a station that out of your house, it's very easy. Mobile or handhelds or portable radios are a lot harder to track because they're less power and they're always moving. But a fixed station can easily be tracked to its source.
So what about all this encryption? I know it can be tracked, but with encryption, how difficult is it for others to listen in? I mean, like you say, if it's an analog,
There's
anybody can still always someone smarter.
Always someone smarter, but the chances are slim. It's
still going to give a high level of privacy.
Yeah, encryption keys are anywhere up to 10 digits long, all numeric. So just the odds of them finding the right key, the right frequency, because if you're talking digital, analog scanners can't pick it up. So they wouldn't even hear it. If they did hear it, it'd be data, and they don't know if they're listening to voice or actual data on the frequency, so they don't even know what they're listening to. If they figured out what mode in digital that you're talking, because there's different modes. There's every radio manufacturer has its own mode. Like Motorola's got Astro or DMR. ICOM's got IDAS or D-Star.
So it's kind of proprietary.
Very proprietary per radio. So
okay.
they have to almost have the exact same radio.
Same radio too. Okay.
And know when you're transmitting to know when to listen, and then just run through all sorts of algorithms to try to figure out your encrypted key.
So for us new guys that aren't ready for that, but are just wanting to click the button and talk and listen, and what are the resources? I mean, you guys, you have your stores, you have all the stuff that you can teach us there. I mean, do you guys offer classes there, or do you point us to the local groups? Do you have a list of all those?
Yeah, it kind of just, you got to know what your end goal is, kind of what, if it's going to be a private use, if you're getting into a ham club. I would always say if you've never been into radio and you have an interest, get into ham, research your local ham club, get signed up, get licensed, know the basics before you can move on, because like you say, it can get so inundating.
Yeah, definitely overwhelming.
Very overwhelming. The first place to start for sure is at least understand what ham radio is. Know your local club. Multiple resources at zero or very extremely low cost to you. You can jump on Amazon and get a Baofeng or Axon radio for $20-$30. It just does amazing things for what you're paying.
Especially for as a starter, or even to have multiples and backups. Yeah, when I first started, my first ham radio, I spent $200-$300, and I mean, it's still, the good ones are still a couple $100, if not more. But you can get these ones from China.
Yeah, they ship pretty quick, and
$20, $30, $40 to get started.
But is the CIA listening through that like they are through the Amazon Echo?
They're, I don't know. I assume they are. Okay, I assume they are listening to everything.
Okay.
So, but
so my radio's not going to turn on me.
Well, you never know. It might be
waiting.
a transformer, right?
That's waiting.
That's why I'm always armed, right? So that, oh, hey, look, there's a toaster. Oh, it's shooting back at me. But
exactly.
So,
so local groups, we can just search the web and find local groups.
There's a lot of local
groups,
ham groups.
Local ham groups.
I know there's a really active Murray Club. That's the Salt Lake Club. There's the Davis County Club that's active. What's down in Orem?
I'm trying to remember the one I'm signed up for down there.
I know Utah County does classes at BYU all the time.
Yeah,
UARC's a big one.
There's a lot of emergency groups out there where, like Utah County Emergency Radio, and you can jump on there, and you don't need to join their club, and they transmit. They have a local net every, I want to say it's every Tuesday or Wednesday, where you can just listen in and see what they're talking about and join in if you want to.
Hey, if I could just jump in here,
of course,
for a minute. Another thing with the Amateur Radio Club, there are organizations particularly called Races and Aries, and that is ham radio operators specifically practicing to handle communications in an emergency, a regional emergency, passing traffic, assisting law enforcement and first responders. Very great organization to get involved with, which is another resource.
RACES. It stands for radio. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but they're different. Community, and they're actually supported typically by like the local sheriff. And I know it is in Utah County.
Involved in that. I know Races. I believe they're affiliated with the Red Cross. But your amateur radio clubs are going to be your best first resource to learn this. They don't expect everybody to come in and do Morse code and field strip a radio and put it back together. They're going to teach you the basics. They're going to teach you the etiquette. They're going to teach you how the radio spectrum is organized and allocated so everybody can operate and be a part of it. So
very cool. So and I guess in our last few minutes here, I just want to encourage you all to get into ham radio a little bit more. Just learn a little bit more about it and why it's important. And as a prepper, I've had my license for probably almost 20 years now, and so it just kind of like carrying a firearm. You have to. It's a learning process. You have to kind of warm up to it. So we've got, in the last few minutes, let's go ahead and take this call and see what question there might be. Hello, caller. You had a question or comment for us?
Yeah. Let me turn my radio down really fast.
All right. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Will anyone at the Preppers Conference be providing materials on how to build your own things?
I don't know if they're going to provide any materials on building your own. We will have a couple classes provided by the local chapter. I think Davis County is the amateur group that's going to come down and teach.
Okay.
But I'm not 100%
Thank you.
sure. But they will be there with a lot of different resources, going over the basic overviews, but then also going into some more advanced stuff. And they will have a booth.
Very
you
cool.
can hang
Any
out in the
other
booth and
retailers
see
that
what we need to
you
do.
can think of that are going to be there for ham radios and such?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
I've been buried in all the marketing stuff. My recruiting team's been taking care of all the vendor sales.
So, Scott, I want to encourage you to get a bunch of Baofangs, come on down, because I think you'll sell the heck out of those things down there. So, in the last few minutes here, what are your final thoughts here on communications?
I think for me, it sounds simpler than I thought it was.
Okay.
You know, the technical details are still just as technical to me, but the use and the purpose, it's now simpler. So thank you guys for sharing of your knowledge. And I think for those of you like me who are looking to get into this, stop procrastinating and just do it.
Get your license, buy an inexpensive one off of Amazon, and start and get going.
Yeah.
And then you'll realize, okay, where do I want to go from here? Because you may not want to jump straight into HF, but learn to start to communicate with connect with your local community through ham. It's a great resource. Thank you for listening, and thank you guys for coming to the show. Appreciate your knowledge and geeking out with us on ham radio. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio. Our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. First Aid Evolved. And we'll catch you guys next week.